So the area highlighted in the green color, that is the thalamus and hypothalamus portions. This is the thalamus part, this one, oval shaped part. And the remaining, this conical shaped area, that is the hypothalamus. And from there arises, or from there, it connects to the pituitary gland. Yeah, okay. So this is the thalamus and the down portion. This one is the hypothalamus. So these two are parts of diencephalon, and diencephalon, and along with these two, there are three other structures also. They are of not that much importance. Okay, these two are the main parts in diencephalon, which play a major role in various body functions. So the other three areas are epithalamus, metathalamus, and subthalamus. And anyway, we saw about subthalamic nucleus. It's the same. Okay. Now, first we are going to study about thalamus. So thalamus is an oval-shaped structure. There are two thalami, and they are oval-shaped structures, and it makes up almost 80% of the diencephalon part. Okay, this is the thalamus when we see from the top view. Okay, so these green masses are the thalamus, and these two are the thalami. Okay, two thalami. So it makes up about 80% of diencephalon and consists of paired oval masses of gray matter. It is made up of gray matter. Okay, the in brain, once again, gray matter is seen outside and white matter is seen inside. So this thalamus, it is just a cluster or a group of gray matter seen in the diencephalon portion. And it is also known as the relay station to all incoming motor and sensory information. So when we studied the functions, or when we studied about the connections of basal ganglia, then the sensory tracts, everything, we saw that thalamus plays a very important role in all these areas, right? In the sensory tracts, both in spinothalamic tracts as well as in the posterior column pathway, we saw that all the second order neurons, they end in the thalamus, and from there they project, or from there third order neurons will carry the information to the sensory cortex. What we saw in sensory tracts. So there it plays a very important role. Likewise, in basal ganglia also, we saw that most of the circulate, or most of the circuit, it passes either through the caudate or the putamen, and from there through globus pallidus, it will go to the thalamus, and from there it is going back to the cerebral cortex again. Maybe premotor, supplementary motor, or primary motor area, wherever it is, the information will pass through the thalamus and it will reach the corresponding or the respective areas in the cerebral cortex. So it is known as the relay station, plays a major role in this form. Then a bridge of gray matter called intermediate mass joins the right and left halves of the thalamus. So we saw that they are a pair of oval shaped masses, right? When we saw the top view, we saw that there are two masses, and these two are connected in between by a small bridge called the intermediate mass. And there is one more thing, that is internal medullary lamina. It is a vertical Y-shaped sheet of white matter dividing the gray matter of both thalami. So when we see the thalamus, we can exactly very clearly see a vertical Y-shaped line or Y-shaped structure seen dividing the thalami into various portions. In both the thalamus, we can see the same. Okay. So yes, this is the intermediate mass. Okay, this is the inverted or the vertical Y-shaped sheet of white matter that divides the gray matter inside the thalamus. Okay, and it is this intermediate mass that divides this thalamus into various nuclei, and they have individual functions, or all of these nuclei have various functions. But generally, we say a few functions for thalamus. So, firstly, about the functions of thalamus. The main function is relaying sensory information. That is, it passes sensory information except smell. That is olfaction. Olfaction, it has a direct connection with the temporal lobe of cerebral cortex. So the smell sensations after stimulating the neurons in the nasal what cavity, it goes directly into the olfactory bulb in the brain, and from there the information will be carried by certain nerves to the temporal lobe of the cerebral cortex. So apart from smell sensation, all other sensations will pass through the thalamus. So it
The smell
plays a
sensation passes through where?
no, it has got it doesn't have any other structures in between. It is the direct connection between the nasal cavity or the receptors in the nasal cavity and the
Olfactory nerve.
yeah, through the olfactory nerve, it reaches the temporal lobe of cerebral cortex. It doesn't go through or it doesn't pass through the thalamus. Okay. But all other sensations, like what we saw in the sensory tracts, like spinothalamic tract, then posterior column pathway, then even this one, vision, audition, etc. Everything will pass through the thalamus, but smell sensation will not pass through the thalamus. It is the direct connection between the olfactory nerve and the temporal lobe of the cerebral cortex. Okay. So every sensation will pass through the thalamus. Then there are certain nuclei that receives the sensory information. Okay, certain nuclei receive the sensory information, process it, and then it will transmit to the corresponding area or to the related area in the cerebral cortex. It's not that all the sensations will pass through any part of the thalamus and will be diverted to any part in the somatosensory area. It's not like that. The various or each and every tract has its own nucleus, or each and every tract uh, is carried by, or the informations are being sent to the cerebral cortex with the help of certain nuclei in the thalamus. So those nuclei will accept those sensations, they'll process it, and then transmit the information to the related area in the cerebral cortex. That's how they relay the sensory information. Is it clear? Okay. Likewise, again, motor information, that is the movement related information. We saw that circuit in basal ganglia, right? In those both the voluntary as well as involuntary movements and everything, the skilled movements, etc. All the motor information after coming from the primary cortex or from the premotor or supplementary area of the cerebral cortex, it will pass to the basal ganglia. From there, it will again pass to the thalamus, and from there back to the cerebral cortex. That's what we saw in that circuit. So every or almost all motor information or the movement information will pass through the thalamus. It will be processed. It will be transmit. It will be processed and then transmitted to the back to the cerebral cortex, from where the cerebral cortex will decide through which pathway the information should be sent to the muscles. Okay. Then next is prioritizing attention. So it is the thalamus that helps to decide what to focus on among the vast amount of information that it receives. So it depends on the type of information, or the thalamus will decide what type of response or what type of information should be prioritized. Like if we get a touch sensation and pain sensation at the same time, okay, when we get a touch sensation as well as pain sensation at the same time, which is the first sensation we recognize? Is it the touch or the pain?
The pain?
Yes, pain is the first sensation that we sense, and it's only after that we'll sense the touch sensation. It is because at that time, when these two stimulations are acting simultaneously on our body, and both these sensations are being carried through the sensory tracts, the thalamus will prioritize from these or among these two. It will, because touch sensation, okay, it can be dealt in the next session, but the pain sensation, it should be dealt first, because otherwise if it doesn't prioritize the pain sensation, it will definitely cause some sort of injury or damage to that particular part of our body. So in order to uh, help us from that pain stimuli, it will prioritize that, so that we'll have an attention towards that portion or towards that stimuli, and we'll take the necessary actions. So likewise, in each and every cases, thalamus will help in prioritizing what to accept first. Okay. Then next is its role in consciousness. It plays an important role in keeping you awake as well as alertness and arousal. That's a main role of thalamus. It's also a role of hypothalamus as well as the limbic system in our body. I hope you know what is limbic system. Right? Limbic system, it is also called emotional brain, because almost all our emotions are being controlled by limbic system, and along with that the memory, etc., everything is being under
Thalamus is
the
part of the limbic system, no?
thalamus. More than thalamus, it is the hypothalamus that is mainly inside the limbic system. Thalamus has got minor role in forming the limbic system, but it's the hypothalamus that has a major role in forming the limbic system. But to some extent, as it has got a partial role in a limbic system, it helps in making you or keeping you alert as well as awake. That's how it maintains the arousal and alertness in our body. Okay. Okay. And then role in thinking and memory, that is cognition and memory. Then since this thalamus, I told that it has got a minor role in a limbic system, or it has got minor connections with the limbic system. All the processing and regulating of emotions, then storage of memories, learning, etc., or all comes under thalamus. Okay. So these are the main functions of thalamus, and along with that, it also contributes to perception and plays a role in sleep and wakefulness. So these are the main functions. The first two main functions of thalamus are relaying sensory information and relaying motor information. And apart from these two, the remaining things are somewhat related to the limbic system also, because it has got a minor connection with limbic system. Clear? Okay. Now, how does the thalamus work? That's what we said previously. So the sensory information, it will travel through the nerve fibers. That is, those informations from the sensory receptors, or from the receptors, they'll pass through the first order, second order neurons, and finally reach the thalamus. Then from there, as I said before, various nuclei, they are responsible for processing different sensory informations or sensory or motor informations received from the body. Then it will be sent back, either sent to the cerebral cortex, that is to the somatosensory area, or to the primary motor area in the cerebral cortex for interpretation. Okay, so first the sensory informations from the receptors, it will reach the thalamus through the second order neurons, and it will end in the thalamus, like in a particular nuclei. Okay, in a particular nuclei it will end, and from there the processing of that sensation will be carried out by the thalamus, and the third order neurons will carry that information to the somatosensory area in the cerebral cortex. Likewise, it also receives motor informations from that is being sent from the cerebral cortex, that is from the premotor and supplementary motor areas of cerebral cortex, and even the somatosensory area to the basal ganglia, and from there it comes back to the thalamus. And once again, the thalamus will interpret, or it will process the information, and that information will be carried to the primary motor area or whichever motor area is involved in that for further interpretation. Okay, that's how it works. So the sensory information travels through nerves from body parts to brain through thalamus. Then specialized areas called nuclei are responsible for processing sensory or motor impulses received from the body and sending selected information to related areas for interpretation. So it is the function of the thalamic nuclei to process the information and do the interpretation. So we'll move on to the thalamic nuclei. So in this area, I have given the name of the nuclei, then their role, their function or role, and the area of cerebral cortex with which that particular nuclei communicates. Okay, these are the three sections I have given. So the first one is anterior nucleus. Their role or function is in memories, then emotions, and behavior regulation. So when such roles or when such things are being carried out, it is the anterior nucleus that takes in charge of that. Then it is connected to the hypothalamus and projects to the cingulate gyrus. What is cingulate gyrus?
Cingulate gyrus is on the brain, in the medial, on the medial surface of brain.
Okay.
It's above the superior to corpus callosum.
Very good. Okay. And what is its function?
Pardon?
What is its function?
It's connected to anterior nucleus.
Okay, it is connected to anterior nucleus. Okay. So it again, the cingulate gyrus is also a part of the limbic system, and it helps in processing emotions and behavior, and or even it regulates the autonomic motor functions. Okay, it also regulates the autonomic motor functions. That are the functions of cingulate gyrus. Okay. The next one is dorsomedial nucleus. Again, it projects to the prefrontal cortex and limbic system, and its role or function is emotional behavior, memory, attention, planning, etc. So anything that is related to the limbic system, it will definitely have a role in emotion and behavior of that particular person. Then next comes ventral posterolateral nucleus that relays sensory information like pain, temperature, and touch. So the lateral spinothalamic tract and anterior spinothalamic tract. Okay, these two sensations pass through the ventral posterolateral nucleus. These two sensations pass through ventral posterolateral nucleus, and the nerves from this nucleus will project into somatosensory cortex. Okay. Likewise, ventral posteromedial nucleus, it relays sensory information from face. That is the trigeminal pathway, which we saw in that one, pain and temperature sensation. That is from the facial region, the sensory information will pass or will reach the ventral posteromedial nucleus of thalamus. And from there, the third order third order neurons will again project to the somatosensory cortex, because it is again the sensation that is being projected. Okay. Then comes ventral anterior nucleus. Its role is motor information about movement. So it relay motor information about movement. That is mainly from, it receives the information mainly from the substantia nigra, then premotor cortex, reticular formation, and corpus luteum. Corpus luteum means caudate nucleus or putamen. So this part, ventral anterior nucleus, receives information, motor information from these areas, substantia nigra, then premotor cortex, etc. And not receive, sorry. They project the ventral anterior nucleus, sends their nerves. They project into this substantia nigra, premotor cortex, reticular formation, and corpus striatum. And their function is relay motor information. Okay. Then next one, ventrolateral nucleus. Ventrolateral nucleus, that nucleus also projects the nerves or projects the neurons into substantia nigra, premotor cortex, reticular formation, and corpus striatum. And it also relays motor information. So these two nucleus, ventrolateral nucleus as well as ventral anterior nucleus, both sense their nerves or both sense their neurons to these areas of cerebral cortex, that is substantia nigra, premotor cortex, corpus striatum, etc. And they both deal in motor information. Okay. Then next is lateral posterior nucleus. And that one receive or the main role that sends information to the visual cortex. So it communicates with the visual cortex, that is in the occipital lobe, and their role is in cognition, then determine prominent visual stimuli. So it helps to determine what type of visual stimulation the person is perceiving at the moment. Okay, so that information will be given to the visual cortex, and visual cortex will do the process the information accordingly. Likewise, the next one is pulvinar nucleus. This nucleus also projects or communicates to the visual with the visual cortex or projects to the visual cortex, and it helps in processing the visual information. Then comes medial geniculate body or medial geniculate nucleus that has its connections with primary auditory area or primary auditory cortex, and it helps in processing auditory information. This medial geniculate nucleus plays this one. And when we study the auditory pathway, the neurons from the cochlear, and that is the cochlear nerve of that vestibulocochlear nerve, it will pass through the trapezoid body, olivary nucleus, etc., and finally end in the medial geniculate body, from where next group of neurons will send their information or collect the information from these nerves and give it to the primary auditory cortex in the temporal lobe. And then comes the reticular nucleus, which influences the activity of other nucleus. Reticular nucleus, it is actually it makes up an outer covering. That's all. It makes up an outer covering of the thalamus, and it influences the activity of other nuclei. It doesn't have any connections with any part of the cerebral cortex. It's just like a covering, or it's just like a protection for the activities of other nuclei in the thalamus. So these are the main nuclei seen in the thalamus and their related functions. Is it clear? Okay.